It's all. Oh, hang on. We're good.
Oh, okay. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. We're refreshing. We are refreshing, actually. Here we go. We're on.
Oh, all right.
Can you give us some introductory music?
Well, you go first. Yep.
Welcome to the last team of Eskimo Joe versus Iain Grandage.
Hello, everybody out there in Facebook land. This is Eskimo Joe. Excitedly enough, we have Joel in the flesh here today. Yeah, boy. He did his 2 weeks in quarantine, and it turns out he's clean. And
It's Joel. It's clean.
And we are delighted to be joined by the amazing director of the Perth Arts Festival, conductor, arranger extraordinaire, Mr. Iain Grandage, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! Hi. So some background information on Monsieur Grandage over here. We did an amazing performance with the West Australian Symphony Orchestra and the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra. And Iain was the conductor and also the arranger of From the Sea. So a lot of, when we did the songs, we sent them out to tender, and all these different arrangers did different string arrangements, and Iain got the amazing job of getting to do From the Sea. You didn't arrange anything else, did you, Iain?
No, I wanted to, and I ran out of time. I'm really sorry. I mean, way back in the day, like I'd arranged a version of Black Fingernails right when it came out, but that was just for bad cellos, really. And this one it was good to try and have a full band doing the thing.
So, and now, you know, obviously you've conducted lots and lots of orchestras and arranged things and written bits and pieces, but now you have the job here in Western Australia as the organizer and programmer of the Perth Arts Festival, which must be a huge honor. How many years do you get to do it for? Is it like a presidency? Does it last for a couple of years, or do you just get one term?
Did you hear Trump? Did you hear Trump last week? He was just going 12 more years, 12 more years. It's like, dude, no. You get it for 4. It is like a presidency. You get it for 4 years, and it's and it goes like that, especially when there's a worldwide pandemic in play. But we're really happy. Sorry,
You get one extra year just for COVID relief.
No, you don't. Like it's historically that long, and you just make hay with what you're given, really. And there's a great privilege in getting to make things out of Western Australia for 2021, and depending on how long this lasts, maybe all the rest of the years.
And is your second year at it then?
So coming into 21 will be the second year. So the first year, I feel more for those festival directors who have a short period of time in a festival, but the whole beginning was chopped off by COVID. And there's so that's Melbourne.
Hold the front page. Did you just call it COVID? This is amazing. I've always called it COVID. You changing the pronunciation of COVID to COVID? It's
like saying nachos
or yogurt or karate.
Basically. No, so can I just run through some of those choices?
Yes.
Yogurt. I say both.
Okay. Yogurt is less offensive than some of the other options. Yeah.
Okay. Croissant.
Yeah, that is a croissant.
Yeah, we'll give that. What about karate?
Well,
not usable.
Potato.
No one says potato.
No.
That was just for the song. Yeah. Seriously.
Really bad run.
How about nachos? Have you ever heard that?
No.
Okay. That's a good thing. I heard that.
There is, like, inside this context. So we got a a strong commitment to Indigenous work here at the festival. My artistic associate here is Kylie Bracknell, and she is teaching us alongside many people inside the community, Noongar. And so we have these fights about, not fights, like how you say things like Borna, trees, wangin, meaning to speak. So the trees speak, and that was that big projection thing that the Perth Festival did up in Kings Park. And but everyone says wangani or wanginyinya, and it's like there's a lot of different versions of that. But apparently it's wangin.
I'd imagine it's also a bit of discrepancy over how you write, because it's not a written language natively, it's a spoken language.
Exactly right. And all of that, so the spelt word is really, it's tough actually to get agreement on how you spell it.
Yeah, I've always respected your long relationship now with commitment to bringing Aboriginal artists into, music programs and all kinds of bits and pieces. I've seen you talk at a bunch of different events, and now I read the intro to the last year's Perth Arts Festival, and there was this huge commitment to, Aboriginal performance in Australia, and especially like language. And obviously in West Australia we have the Noongar language and people over here. How does that kind of flow into having a festival where you can't have any international acts this year or next year? I
mean, it's probably lucky I'm not Polish and just arrived here and didn't quite know who the artists are in town, and there's lots of people like yourselves who you have long relationships with, and then it's what a pleasure it is to kind of to have opportunities inside the arts festival to do that stuff. Look, in terms of the indigenous landscape, I just figured that you can't make everything about this place. When you sing songs about this place, when you write stories about this place, you can't ignore the fact that the place has its own stories, and those stories have been here for tens of thousands of years, and you need to acknowledge it. You can't ignore it. It's not terra nullius. It's completely filled. Every river, every stone, every grain of sand has its stories. Every tree, every native animal that was here. And so how best you tell all of those stories, and then everything that you do kind of goes through that frame. And it's really the best part of this job is the fact that you get to try and make a change in the big psychology of the city in making big statements like that.
And before we move on, because we've got a million questions coming through from people who are dying to ask us all kinds of bits and pieces. How do you balance that with your work as a conductor? Because obviously you conducted the West Australian Symphony Orchestra shows, and I was really amazed and learned so much about what a conductor does. I mean, we play in a rock and roll band, and we didn't really know what a conductor does, but just to watch you every night go through the full, music and make notes on the fly and
manage 50 people.
Just very impressive, yeah. But also, the biggest comment we got was your dancing. And one night you actually ripped your pants. You danced so hard.
And you smashed your baton.
Yeah.
Bloody rock star.
I'm really sad that my baton is not here, but it's still the same one. So for those people at home, the baton's it's a chopstick. Basically, it's a piece of wood with a little bobble on the end that makes sure it's balanced, and it's so that people can see from a distance about what it is. But I get excited. I get excited with you guys on stage. The job of a conductor is it's frankly overrated. Historically, this idea of the maestro thing, and clearly there are people who do bring an amazing wisdom and insight into music 200 years ago, and the seriousness and the earnestness and the those sort of poets. But that's not me. For me, that job is about communicating, and it's about communicating with you guys who are out the front, who are the feature, and communicating so that the other people on stage are having a good time. Like the whole thing about
stealing the show.
Pretty much.
Because all the feedback you got was about you, bro.
They've seen you lots, and then it was just like, Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, you broke your baton, and I was wondering, was it like Ron Weasley in Harry Potter? You know, like he broke his baton and his magic didn't work right. Did you like point at the violin and the tuba started playing?
It's just that so bent. So bent. But there is a sense of kind of laughter and slight pity from the orchestra when I broke my baton. It's just like, wow, you really are. It was like I was doing this, and then it was a cross. It was just like, yeah, like there had to be something very strong, and my arm just happened to be in the way. So there's it only breaks not through it's through complete incompetence. You know, like you shouldn't. The baton shouldn't be anywhere near another limb if you are a conductor.
If you have any technique whatsoever.
Exactly right. So when you go, you stole the show, what you got in that was all I've got. I've got a bit of dancing. I've got a bit of make the people smile. I turn around, just make people feel comfortable. Not really a conductor.
No, but you are, mate. And I think it's about that translation. You know, you're the communication device between the audience and the orchestra, essentially, you know.
Yeah, and to that degree I am, but that's the gig. It's only the gig that I'm doing inside the festival as well. Like, you're telling stories. How can you tell the stories so that there's as much energy on stage as possible? And quite frankly, like I had all body tingles in the that one.
Running out of needs. Yeah.
Running out of needs, honestly, in that first series of concerts in the concert hall, and that kind of, honestly, where the band went to on that particular chart on that particular night, I was just like, oh. And those moments happen. That's in the top 5 moments for me on stage ever, anytime in 35 years of being on stage. Honestly, it was like levitating where the band got to. When I say band, I mean orchestra. Yeah.
I remember you actually saying that as we walked off stage. You were so, you were like, running out of needs is as good as it gets. Like, you were pumped. So this is not just talking it up. It's great.
Especially because with that song, it was a real battle for you. We could tell, just bringing everyone ahead and trying to get them on the beat, because everyone was kind of falling behind. And on that night, it just kind of seemed to lock in.
Yeah.
And energy was great.
The good shepherd.
Yeah.
But I must say, like, you talk about those moments, but if we go back to that cello moment, like you three taught me how to play in time. Like, you always have this version as a classical musician, and you would have found it even inside that orchestra thing. But when I was playing cello and you sit there going, actually, no, it's not that, like actually the determination to be like right there it's a thing that classical musos never need to learn, or certainly from my vintage. Maybe classical musos who are studying today do learn it, but in terms of actually playing right in the pocket, it just doesn't. It's not something that you necessarily learn. Certainly, as a string player, everything is about the and that whole orchestra just kind of like, whoa. It's a very fluid environment, and it was so. As I came in to be conducting the orchestra, I was aware that that's what I had to try and do, and sometimes we succeeded.
The first rehearsal was pretty harrowing for us, because mainly because we didn't know what we were doing at that point, because we were doing these skeletal arrangements of the songs that we'd never kind of played before, and we were kind of thinking, oh, we'll let the orchestra show its cards first, and then we'll kind of work out what we're doing. To the point where it came up to, you pulled out a chart, the next chart, and now we're playing Sweater. And Cav didn't actually know we were playing Sweater and had to Google the lyric. Yeah, that was so good. But that's how woefully underprepared we were.
I just thought it was so funny that, like, we haven't played Sweater in like maybe 15 years or something. And the one time we decide to pull it out of the bag is when we've got like a 68-piece orchestra behind us. We're like, brilliant.
We're trying to elevate ourselves to that next level.
Yeah,
of
you know what to make this better? If we played Sweater right now.
But that was how you were discussing the orchestra kind of swimming around the beat, and that's what it felt like to us on stage, having being, you know, slaves to the metronome for the last 20 years kind of thing. Like hearing the orchestra play, I was like, whoa, this is hell soupy.
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was just going to
thing,
say, it's
and-
like playing in a bowl of soup.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we had 3 rehearsals, I think. And in the end, you managed to glue it all together, you know, or glue the orchestra.
Not me, the band, like the orchestra themselves just go, okay, that's it. And you can do what you can. And so why I ended up dancing is actually you just go, that's one way of visualizing where that beat is as much as this, because that they're used to playing ba, ba, like after that. But if you're just doing this, then you get much more. That's actually why I was dancing, not because I wanted people to watch me or any focus away from you 3.
Well, I remember walking off stage after those Perth concert hall shows that we did 2 nights in a row and thinking, oh man, that was probably one of my favorite moments on stage ever.
Yeah.
And then the fact that we got to do it in Tasmania, which was an amazing night in itself, because there was these torrential rains that, like, in no exaggeration, cars were floating down the road outside the concert hall. And that was a much smaller orchestra, which had its own thing, and I really enjoyed that as well. But then we got to redo it with Waslow again at Kings Park, which was cool as well, because I've always loved the concert hall because it's such a beautiful sounding room. But it was nice to do it as an open air concert, because there was no acoustics, and we could, you know, for the sound guys out the front, they could probably pull the rock band together with the, you know, the orchestra a little bit more. So I just felt so blessed that we got to do it more than once, basically.
Yeah.
Before we throw out some questions, I just wanted to make one brief observation, or just share one of my observations. One of the things that blew me away the most when we started rehearsing with an orchestra was that the conductor, the upbeat, is the downbeat. You know what I mean? It's not 1, 2, 3,
like
4.
a hi-hat. Yeah,
it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's tiring.
It just absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
it's like they've got a hi-hat up here and they're going.
Because you actually think that it's there.
Yeah.
You think that it's supposed to be go 1, 2, 3, and where that's the point where it should play. 1, 2. But then you're realizing that in terms of reaction time, that actually ends up being where it's at the top, and it's like
chick. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it makes sense if you're looking from a distance, right? It's like that. You know, you can't actually see my hand at the moment. But
All right, we're gonna find some questions.
all right, question time.
All right.
What do we got?
Cooper just says, I have my Esky stubby holder. Great.
Thank
you.
Cooper, I couldn't find mine today. I was going to get mine. Sorry.
Oh, look, this is a lovely comment from Amanda Dobson. Thank you, Amanda. She says, I have a hideous thing where I cry whenever I hear a symphony start up. No one catches me, though. I turn away and sob quietly. It's a beautiful sound, though. It's quite stirring, isn't it?
Oh, but also the way you built the top of your orchestral show, so you gave that moment, that whole first number to the orchestra.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But like psychologically for the orchestra to have that moment just where they know it's their moment, like it's really both considerate of you, but also how that kind of, it frames the whole night. So you don't go, the worst that these concerts ever happen is when there's a band out the front and there's a large backing band out the back. And the more you can make it like that and starting off like that, just to make
the instrument to be the instrument. No, we wanted the orchestra to be the instrument. Do you know what I mean? And we were just backing the orchestra, realistically.
I just remember standing side of stage, the 3 of us, and just listening, going, this is a pretty good band. I'm like, oh shit, it's us. All right, we're on stage now. And it's actually quite a freaky moment when you don't lead the charge. If someone else is leading the charge and then you're joining your own band on stage, it was a really surreal moment.
I remember at Stage Tech, who's been a mate of ours and made music with us for a while, Andy Lawson, after the first day of rehearsal, I was like, okay, give us your honest critique, because like I said, we weren't sure what we were doing. And he was like, it's best when you guys don't play at all.
rough.
But we got there.
Yeah.
So another question. Sam Ingramart said, how did the idea come about doing a show with an orchestra?
Well, we'd have to get in a time machine and go back to the year 2000. Yes, please. To the year 2014 or 13, I think it was. We we all sat down around a table and we had decided as a band that we probably wanted to take some time off and do some other creative projects. We said, wouldn't it be great if we came back in a couple of years' time and did a big orchestral show? In the meantime, one of our very good mates, Josh Pike, was doing an orchestral show, and I went and saw him at the Perth Concert Hall. And the lady who, oh my God, I've totally forgotten her name, Nat, yeah, who had just started, that was like her first year. She was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to get Eskimo Joe? And I was like, absolutely. And then the conversation started, and I think that took about 2 years on top of that to finally organize it. But you know, I'm glad we didn't rush into it. It was just like a really slow build, the whole idea. And once we got there, it was just a great way for us to come, because we hadn't played properly as a band in a few years. We'd done a few shows, but this was our first, like, doing something outside of just playing the greatest hits at a festival or whatever. So I think it was the most nervous we had been walking on the stage in a really long time. And that kind of lightning in the veins is so important, you know, otherwise, why do you do it? You know?
It was the first time I'd been nervous in a while, that's for sure.
Probably since that 2009 Big Day Out when it was 52 degrees on stage. We were pretty nervous walking on that one as well.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever seen Cav wear shorts on stage.
Yeah. You don't wear shorts on stage. It's not
Shorts
it's not,
and music don't mix unless you're limping.
Pictures didn't happen.
Yeah.
And even Limp Bizkit, they're not shorts, they're just short.
They're
long pants.
They're what you would call culottes now, Stu.
Yeah.
Anyway, next question.
My question is, what were you more nervous in front of the in front of the crowd or in front of the orchestra? Like at the beginning of the orchestra, or when you were there in the show?
In the show,
I think the show, it's the show itself. The orchestra was okay because when it's musician to musician, you feel like there's a common ground that you're on. But I think it was such a momentous occasion. And as RuPaul would say, don't fuck it up.
All right, Becky Eves. Hi, guys. Bring on the end of COVID so you can tour again. Here's my questions to both yourselves and Iggy. What was the most challenging part of turning such iconic Eskimo Joe songs into more classical tunes?
I think that would be a question for Iggy. How did you go about arranging an Eskimo Joe song?
What was the most challenging part, apart from having the word sweater written in front of you? Because that's not an easy one to do.
He didn't have to arrange that. But how did you begin to arrange From the Sea?
Well, From the Sea, like, again, back to the cello thing, like we started it way back then in that, I don't know why I always thought of it as a tango, but it kind of had that kind of four on the floor vibe. And to be frank, in the context of that whole orchestral show, like I kind of miss the drive of big drums inside it, and the fact it felt, you know, if like what I had in my head didn't end up eventuating inside that arrangement.
That's
because
we told you to basically do Eleanor Rigby though.
you did say that, and that's what we did, and that's kind of, but they're really good. That trust and that handover from you guys, it doesn't happen often. I've done a series of orchestral shows with bands that just play exactly what they would normally play, and any band that's worth its salt, that arrangement is, you know, works without anything else if it was the original song. And the fact that you were so free and stripped back at the beginning of the process for every one of these songs was the absolute win for me, because like as the conductor, but also as the arranger, where you go, come on, do what you want. And that's with just like a little pointer, just going, make it Eleanor. I don't know, is that, so I tried to use that little Eleanor Rigby, like a rhythm from Eleanor Rigby. I was trying to get close to Eleanor Rigby without getting into copyright issues. Like, is this the conversation that starts the Land Down Under?
No, don't even say that stuff. Oh my God. Travesty.
All right, here we go. Becky, it's the number 2 question from her. Thank you, Becky. Which Eskimo Joe song do you think is actually better with a more orchestral sound?
Running Out of Needs.
Running Out of Needs, step up, I must say.
Childhood Behaviour was...
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Childhood Behaviour. And let's be honest, Comfort You is way better.
Yeah, Comfort You was great. I mean,
that was a magical moment, I reckon.
I really enjoyed Running Out of Needs, because there's a moment where the bridge happens and it does like a mountain of smoke moment, and the band drops out, and it's just the orchestra and with the voice. And for me, that was like one of those, you know, you spend a lifetime as a kid to an older person, like writing songs in front of the mirror, imagining you're going to be a famous rock star. And you have these ideas of what it would be to be this person on stage having that moment. And for me, that moment in childhood behavior was that moment. You know, like I was singing with an orchestra behind me, just in this beautiful concert hall. It was that moment.
Yeah.
Do you reckon, do you still do that? I'm really interested in that, like what you can imagine into your life.
I still write songs in front of the mirror and pretend that I'm playing it in front of lots of people before I've even written the song. I pretend I'm performing the video clip at the same time. And for some reason, it just helps the song come into fruition. You know, if I pretend the song's already written before I've written it. So I still have that moment on a daily basis, if that answers your question.
I know that in my day job, if I nail a formula on a spreadsheet, I just imagine I'm nailing it in front of like 2,500 people. They're all just like, yes, he did it!
That's horrible.
All right. Megan Warren says, are there any plans to do further collaborations with Iain Grandage?
Well,
we'd love
apart
to.
from this one,
I think we would absolutely love to.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I guess, how busy are you at the moment? Have you got anything on the cards for the next 8 months?
This is a full ambush.
My day job doesn't involve formulas, but it does involve a lot of writing of words and talking with people. But like for sure, the Eskies are going to be in a Perth Festival, aren't you? Like in 22 or 23?
How do you?
We weren't in Highway to Hell.
You were too famous for Highway to Hell.
Yeah, well, we were probably asked and cost too much money, unfortunately. How do you, as a counter question, how do you, if you've got bands like, say, ourselves, Tame Impala, who live in West Australia, John Butler, and San Francisco, another great West Australian band. How do you, when I think of arts festivals, I think of not bands just doing their gig, but, doing something, outside of that, bringing the art into it. How do you get a band like Eskimo Joe and turn it into an arts festival project?
Often it comes from, sometimes that's my job, to create an environment like Highway to Hell, where you imagine the thing, and then you drive hard at it until, and that was the sort of project where fundamentally it didn't matter who was on the trucks. Like, the event was kind of more than each of the individual components, and always having kind of female leads in all of the trucks, so that there was kind of like flipping the Bon idea on its head, so it wasn't too male rock. So there's ideas which are kind of bigger than
Bon. It spells no.
Thanks. I got nothing for that.
Keep going.
So as you were.
But then there's other things where a band or an artist will come with a project. This is an offer. Where they come with a project going, how about something like this? Or actually, and it means that they can do something that's not necessarily more experimental in that sense, but in something where they're not sure that it's not down the line what you would normally do. And so in that context, that's where the arts festival can kick in, because it does feel like a festival show.
But I also think if you can combine a number of different art formats in one performance, you know what I mean? That to me is exciting as well. If it's
exactly right.
If you're just telling a story in another way rather than just musically.
Is there an expectation as you, Iggy, to bring your classical music, connections to the festival? Does each festival presenter have like a superpower that they are employed to bring to the festival?
That was certainly part of my pitch. The two bits were a long relationship with collaborating with Indigenous artists. The other was there's a history way back in the last century of there being a lot of classical music elements inside the festival, and that had slowly got less and less. Not less and less, it just gets more and more expensive actually to bring an entire opera company out or an entire orchestra. And is that the best way to spend, lots of six figures over and over and over again? Is that, and in the end, the answer is invariably not necessarily. And so, but undoubtedly that was a big part of me going for the job, and people do love it here. And also we got an awesome hall for classical music.
That we do.
All right, let's take another question. Bronnie McPherson. I always get this one wrong. Bronnie McPher.
Bronnie.
Bronnie. Good on you, Bronnie. Bronnie Murfinski. I will sneakily be watching while at work. I do have a question. How did you guys decide which songs were going to be transformed, and were there any that you tried but you weren't happy with? There were a number of them. Yeah.
There was a couple. Well, Sweater didn't make it. It just felt ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one of the songs that I think we
just picture how ridiculous it sounds in your head, and that's how ridiculous it was.
So, Bronnie, I don't know if you just heard the recording that we did of the Wazo shows, or you managed to get to the shows yourself. But for people who went to the shows, they would have seen there was quite a few more songs on the set list. I think the songs that worked the best on the night that we recorded, we put on the live album. But there was some songs that I think I would have loved to have made it on there, and for one reason or another, no fault of the arranger, but it just didn't quite work. The marriage, if you get two people creatively, it's just not always going to connect. And Smoke, I think, was one of the songs that I was surprised didn't make it on there, but the arrangement wasn't really what we were thinking about. And some of the amazing thing that happened as we were lucky enough to do these rehearsals with Wazo, that I don't know if many bands get to do this, and we had a couple of the arrangers in the audience, they were just in the hall, and we got to kind of talk through the bits that we liked and didn't like about the arrangements. And I remember Planet Earth being one of those ones that kind of got tweaked and pulled around until we got to a good place with it.
That arrangement was amazing.
It was, but I think it started at a place where we were like, oh, this isn't quite working for us. And I think we tried to do that with Smoke, and there might have been another, well, apart from Sweater, I think there might have been another one or two songs that we just kind of went, oh, look, this is great, but it's just not working. Yeah, there were some songs that didn't make it.
In terms of how we picked them, we literally just, as a band, before we even talked to the head arranger, we went through pretty much every song on every album and just pictured it in an orchestral sense and made a really long short list, and then went through each one with the head arranger and made a short list smaller and went from there. Yeah.
We were looking for songs with high dynamics, ones that were like Running Out of Needs, where there was kind of like big moments and small moments, because that seemed to work in an orchestral, situation.
Emma Wright, when are you all going to be playing together again? Eskimo Joe and Wasso is the best. Well, I don't know, to be honest.
I don't know. Yeah. How can we...
Are you sure you don't know?
No, we are actually. We're sure we don't.
We're sure. Unless there's an offer we don't know about.
But look, I mean, we put so much effort in. Look, it was literally years in the making. And I remember after doing the first one, Nat came up to us afterwards and was like, that can't be it. We need to do more of these.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't, obviously. And so we know we've got a great show in the bag. So, whenever we can roll it out.
We've got the arrangements. And like we said, like every night that we played with Iggy, it was just so valuable, because we would tweak, we'd tweak the arrangements, and we would literally, Iggy would literally be backstage, tweaking the master copy of the arrangements. And there's just so much time and energy that's been put into that. And so yeah, we definitely have to do it again.
Hey,
and that repeat stuff.
Just off topic, do you know if there's any orchestras who work off digital script, of digital notation, or do they all use paper?
So the Australian Chamber Orchestra does.
Make a change, you have to go around and change it on, everyone's manuscript.
various ones use PDFs, but that still requires you to reissue the PDFs.
Yeah.
And so there's a series of, but generally because each iPad is like on iPads, they're kind of doing that. And certainly Harry Connick 15 years ago was running stuff because he used to sing in different keys depending on how late he'd been out the night before. And he would quite literally just flick a switch before a chart and just go put it down a couple of semitones. The band would all have to play in a different key.
Wow.
Whoa, that's good class.
Yeah. So I know that there have been some people like that who've had live changing things, but generally an orchestra is, you know, you have your own personal markings and that doesn't necessarily work.
Righty-ho. Paul Garvey, this one's just for us. Can you guys do some YouTube lessons on how to play your songs on guitar? I think that's a great idea.
That's a really good
And
suggestion.
yes, I will. I'll start doing that.
Because I don't have to do anything in those YouTube suggestions. So it's a lot of work for the two guitarists in the band. But
I do have issues with
I'm
my
busy that
laptop.
day, yeah, actually.
I've got issues with my laptop, but I'll just do it on my phone. Should be fine. All right. Any plans to come to the UK when it's safe again? Karen Tully asks. Look, we'd love to tour again internationally. It's not financially viable at this stage or even possible.
I just don't think it's going to happen for a couple of years, unfortunately. There'll be no getting on international planes.
2 years, you think?
Yeah, that's what all the big airlines are saying. So
I hear that they can actually inject like bleach into the body and UV.
yeah,
Like
How do you get the light inside?
you got to get. That's what the doctors are all about.
well, I mean, apparently, Donald Trump's got he's got a vaccine. Luckily enough, he's going to release it on November the 1st. There you go.
And that's Exhibit A.
Yeah, got it. Brilliant.
All right, Elizabeth Ulrich says, where did the inspiration come from to take such a hard-hitting song like Foreign Land and make it into something so somber and different sounding? That's one for Gavin.
I guess, you've got to kind of take it back to where songs start, oh, yes. No, actually, I've got heaps of beer. So with
One for me, thanks, Joel.
Yeah, can you get one for Iggy Way there? With Foreign Land, we had just come out of touring the album Black Fingernails Red Wine, and as we toured that record, that album just seemed to have legs. We toured it for 3 years before we sat down and made another record. And by the time we finished touring it, the venues were huge. The crowds were just getting bigger and bigger, and we were playing, bigger, selling out more and more nights and bigger venues. So you tend to start to write around, the venues that you're playing and the reaction that you're getting from the crowds. And at that point in time, all of these big rock and roll songs were, were getting the best reaction. But where Foreign Land started was this quite gentle moment, being in New York when Heath Ledger passed away. So it started on an acoustic guitar, but, I also had this kind of little loop that I'd made before we left Australia of this Turkish kind of with me playing really bad John Bonham drums over the top. So when we got back and it was time to start writing a record, everyone was like, well, what do we got? And we had this jam and we were like, brilliant, like what song are we going to put over this crazy? And I was like, well, I've got this idea, and that evolved into Foreign Land. So I think with the orchestral stuff, we just thought it was a really great chance to revisit that song and take it back to kind of the roots of where that song started, which was quite a vulnerable moment, and when you start to write songs, they always start really slow and really mellow, and they ramp up as you turn them into a band song. So it just gave us a chance to take it back to the the bare bones of where that song first started.
But also,
You bet.
you had reworked the song solo before the orchestral.
I'd been playing. We as a band, we'd been going out and doing it for a few shows like that as well, and it had just kind of evolved a little bit.
We had. We arranged a whole thing off the full version. And I remember it was one of those slightly awkward moments where it was just like, no, that's not the version of the song we were going to do. And your instinct was exactly right to make it really pared back. And so I think there was a really quick turnaround, kind of 24-hour turnaround between doing the band version of Foreign Land and turning it right down into something quite quiet and intimate back to that original version.
Yeah, I think that arranger lived in the States, so we had to like, I had to record an acoustic version of the song and then send it to him, and then he arranged it and sent it back. But I have to say, it was definitely my most sphincter clenching moment of the entire set, because you know, there was no anchor to play to, and I remember you and I had to do this thing where you'd kind of have the acoustic, but I was, you know, floating off somewhere into the ether. And every night I thought it was just going to fall in a heap, but it was, you know, one of those really,
Not just you, yeah.
Sorry,
Not just you. Like I was the same. Like eagle eye on you. So that arranger is Joe Twist, and for those with kids, he's also one of the composers on Bluey. So you'll see his name on a few of the more orchestral Bluey episodes. Like, he's a fantastic. He was living in Hollywood for a long time. He came back during COVID, and now he's back in Brisbane, where he came from originally. And maybe he'll get back to the States. But is the most productive composer in all of Australia. Amazing guy.
And how much is that a thing? You know, obviously, if you're an actor, that's probably the number one profession where you just kind of got to get out of Australia if you want to work. There's not enough work here. As a musician, you know, we just kind of rock up with our amps and plug in and just play to whoever will listen. But a lot of musicians have to leave as well, especially if you want to be a big pop act like Troye Sivan or someone like 5 Seconds Summer. You know, they've all moved overseas. How does that work in the classical world for, you know, people like Joe Swift?
So depends what you want to do. So there's a guy, Tim Davies, and Joe are the two big Aussies in LA. So if you want to go into movies, and Tim Davies is doing like very top of the tree, Frozen, like doing the orchestrations for Frozen, you know, like kind of like, and so if you want to be doing that stuff, then you need to be slightly more in people's face, especially because generally you would be in charge of conducting and recording the sessions. But for classical composers, I mean, meeting people is not generally a strong suit. It's just like you write the music and the music can travel because it's all in the dots. But for those where communication's really key, and then actually being closer to where the films are being made and being in the face of agents and directors, you know, it's about the meetings with directors and those sort of things, and then conducting with those awesome session musos on the West Coast.
I think that flows on to the next question from Cooper. I thought Cooper wasn't going to ask any questions this time, but he has. Have you composed any scores for blockbuster movies yourself?
Me. So I was in, when I didn't get to see Joe or Tim there, but I was in LA for a couple of for 4 trips attached to a DreamWorks animation called Larrikins, which was being directed by Tim Minchin, another West Australian. And Tim was writing the songs and I was doing the score around that. And in that context, I was inside Hans Zimmer's studio. So Hans's studio was there and I was in the room next door, and Hans gave us the big kind of all access to all of his sample library. And I was just like a kid in a chocolate factory. It was that moment, like you, Cav, where you just go, you always imagined. Like I started to do music because I wanted to write Hollywood movies, you know, that's that. And then I've just followed various paths and opportunities that have happened. But then this one, because of how generous Tim Minchin is, and just kind of this opportunity landed on my plate. And so I sat there. The short answer is no, because that movie got cancelled. But I got as close as to have a conversation with a series of conversations and a couple of weeks with Hans Zimmer, next to Hans Zimmer.
Amazing.
Who calls me Icky. He's got very German, and that's why I was playing this. Not why I was playing this, but do you know what? If you look at the Buggles and Video Killed the Radio Star, the person playing the keyboard is Hans Zimmer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just amazing.
Icky. How about that COVID situation?
But he was just at that. He was just at that time going. Or he was doing Batman versus Superman was the movie that he was doing, like the umpteenth blockbuster. And he was going, oh, Iggy, I don't think I can do any more fucking blockbusters. and just so tired. And he stopped. That was the last one he did. And he's doing music for the Blue Planet and a whole pile of other things. But he stepped right away from it.
How did your relationship with Tim Minchin continue after that?
Yes.
Were there lots of jokes about both being redheads, that came out of that relationship?
So Tim's more important than that. Like we certainly bonded over gingerness, and my son's ginger, and so that's just continuing. But like it was literally a conversation with Tim 15 years ago where I said, you know what, my dream is to conduct orchestras for Pop's concerts. And no one. It's only if someone goes, we want to give you a Guernsey, and Tim gave me a Guernsey, said it has to be Iggy to do he knew that I could arrange, but no one knew if I can conduct. And so it was through Tim that it all started, actually, conducting Pop's concerts.
Wow.
Awesome.
I first met Tim when we were both very, very young, before either of us had done anything. I played his son where I had to simulate masturbation on stage.
And how'd that go for you?
Welcome back to the live stream for those of you who've just joined us.
Well, Cat's just dropping mics. It's got some tequila in that beer.
Yep. We don't talk about it anymore, but we feel bonded over that experience. So
I saw that play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Haunting.
UWA.
Haunting images.
Stayed with me. Just burned into the retina.
I love this. What was the play?
I can't even remember what it was called, but it was written by a friend of ours, and Tim was just beginning his kind of comedy music thing a little bit then. He had a band on the side, and but he was earnestly doing acting. I was like 19, he was like 21 or 22 maybe. And he played my dad, and I played the disgruntled hippie son, and as my larrikin father came back, to try and bond with me again.
And so my question for you, Cav, is was the self-pleasuring in the script, or was it an offer as an actor? You just decided that.
I was just jamming. I was just like, I'd make this scene awesome. No, it was in the script, and I had to just kind of make that work in front of a theatre of people.
It was at that stage, because Cav had always wanted a career on stage, and it was at that point he was like, I'm going to be a musician.
That was totally the final moment. I was just like, you know what? I don't think I want to be an actor.
All right,
So I started.
thank you, Mark and Jade, for that. Sorry, Iggy. It's not actually just all about us. We need to involve the audience. Morgan Jade says, if you could choose any instrumental blockbuster soundtrack to name as your own work as a composer, what would it be? Any soundtrack. Let's just go any soundtrack.
Just pretend that it was yours.
I mean, it has to be the first Star Wars,
I was
like episode 4. Like, there's honestly, in terms of what that does, and the number of times I've cried to that opening titles.
But it's not even just the open title, the whole soundtrack. There's so many moments in that movie where you're like, oh, how good is this tune?
Yeah. And so he took 2 models for that. One is a piece called The Planets by Holst, and apparently there were a lot of temps that were his model in that. But the other one is who I copy in all of my orchestration, which is this French composer called Ravel. And in terms of how you make an orchestra go and just sound magnificent, he's playing all those rules. He kind of knows that there's no one with a better knowledge of what an orchestra can do in that context than John Williams. So, like, it's in orchestral terms, I'm afraid it has to be his.
It's amazing when you analyze those big John Williams numbers. They all have the same sort of structure in terms of the orchestral structure. Everyone's got their role in it.
Also, like big melodies that are really memorable. I went and saw Hans Zimmer last year, and one thing I walked away thinking was there wasn't many melodies that stuck in my head. It's just texture and vibe kind of thing.
exactly right.
Williams, it's just Hooksville.
Yeah, you hum it, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, yes.
So John Williams' best mate, like, so when he was coming up and they were both like getting gigs, his best mate was this guy who played in the Wrecking Crew, and composed like every TV hit from the 80s. I can't even remember his name, but it was like Hill Street Blues and like NYPD Blue or whatever it's called. No, what was the other big one? Law and Order. All of those big ones, and they're still. They thank you. They're still really good mates, and apparently they have this thing that when they talk about music, they call it their dog and pony routine, where so you just got to work out who's the dog and who's the pony in that relationship. But
All righty.
Mic drop.
What else have we got?
Fire.
Yes.
Keep going.
Oh, here we go. There is one. This is from Susan McKinnon. There's one song that I think would make an amazing orchestral piece, and it's Thunderclap.
Well,
I don't think we've ever played that live, have we?
funnily enough, that song should have gone on the album Inshallah, and I think we had moonwalked away from it, but it ended up on the soundtrack of the second Twilight movie. And it was just the demo that we did. And I just so regret that, we went into the studio with this amazing producer at Gil Norton, and we didn't, I remember playing it for him in a moment. And I think of some of the songs that we put on the record instead of that, it was a really good song. I still regret not recording that properly, but yes, thank you, Susan. Let's revise that.
It was kind of like almost the first song that we wrote for the next record after Black Fingernails. Yeah. So maybe it wasn't as far up the pecking order as far as we were concerned.
Yes.
The new ones are always your favorite, right?
Yeah, but in hindsight, it was
we were
song.
wrong.
It had a good vibe.
Yeah. I forgot about that song actually. When you read that out, I was thinking Thunderstruck. And I was thinking that would be sick. Orchestral array. Yes, here we go.
Here we go. Ready? Wait.
Ah.
Done.
Yeah. Amazing.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Iain Grandage.
Yeah.
Melissa Tweedy says, any chance of a tour in the Northern Territory? Nope.
Unfortunately, no touring at all for the time being, but we would love to take the orchestral show up to the Northern Territory. So start a petition, make it happen.
Yeah. Apparently,
just so you know, the conductor of the Darwin Symphony Orchestra lives here in Perth. So I'll introduce you. That's the first way in. He would be well up for it.
All right, brilliant. Let's do that.
It's a long drive to work.
Yeah.
Sharon Bagley Hunter says, COVID has certainly changed the way the entertainment industry is reaching people. Is there anything that you are really enjoying doing differently to adapt? I'd say this. I'm really enjoying these.
Well, this is one thing. I mean, I guess, what we do with music is one part of it, but the reason why we get on stage and play is that we love to communicate with fans and do all those kinds of bits and pieces. And I always think, and I personally have written, I think, some really, really good songs in this time, just because I've actually had time to sit down and in a consecutive, period of time, not getting on a plane and going, actually just work on the songs. I always think back to the Beatles. It always comes back to the Beatles. But when they sat down to do Rubber Soul and Revolver, they were so tired of touring. It had become this thing where the fans screamed so loud, and the PAs, and the sound equipment weren't worth it, that they couldn't really, communicate what they were doing. And as a consequence, they were like, well, let's just sit down and this will be our postcard that we send out to the world. And I feel like, we got to do that with Say Something. We got to actually, write this postcard and record it and send it out to the world. And that's one of the reasons why Joel's here. We're going to sit down and we're going to write some new music, and we probably won't get to tour it for a long time, but we're going to send it like a postcard out to the world. And I think that's really cool.
And properly record Thunderclap.
Yes.
We're going to properly, yes.
Probably won't do that.
Yes, we probably won't, but yes.
It's like
we could do that.
Mike Oldfield going back and re-recording every note of Tubular Bells. It's like, I know you can.
Properly record Thunderstruck.
Yes.
Finally.
Yeah. Ian, ready? Go.
Our management has just asked us to mention We do have the live Wasso CD recording available to buy on our merch store. Just log into eskimojoe.net. You don't have to log in, just type it in, and it's available to buy.
That's what you call native branding, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Robbie Cockrell just says AFL Grand Final ?
Well,
Going to Brisbane.
Well, considering we're in Brisbane right now, I think that's a good sign. That
You should be asking Powderfinger that question.
Exactly.
I'll put my house on it. That those private school boys will be playing at the AFL Grand Final.
Throwing it down.
Next question.
Hoggy, Cogsy.
We love you.
Nina McKenzie, have you ever considered writing music specifically for an orchestra?
Well, I mean, this is a question for Iggy as well, but like, would you ever consider doing something collaborative with a band where they write the songs, and as opposed to getting to that end point where we're like, here's the songs, they're completely written. Would you ever do something where the songs get written in a demo form and then you're part of the collaborative process of the whole entire record? I remember one of my favorite albums when I was much younger was the Brodsky Quartet. I don't know. Do you know the Brodsky Quartet? With
and all Elvis Costello.
Elvis Costello, yeah.
It was the Juliet Letters. Yeah.
Yes. And had some great songs on it. But clearly there was like, I got the impression with that where he was kind of jamming over a lot of their arrangements. But I love that idea that, you know, people have different musical sensibilities. Like he would have had to write in a different way, that he, you know, getting out of that formula, because they come from such classical backgrounds. So
perhaps that can be the next Perth Festival collaboration.
That's right. Just add some more work on your plate.
But I'm sure you can get around that.
Yeah.
That just can't be. Yes, it just can't be me. That's just really inappropriate. It's like my surname's not Trump, so I can't give myself. I can't give myself my own gig. But in short answer to your question, I reckon that's the best way to do it. Like if you can start it, so the genesis is inside that. I'm not quite sure how you describe what sounds are in mind, so that you then get to feedback off each other in it. That's.
I think that's the most difficult thing when you're talking about collaborating with a classical composer, is that everything's in their head. They can hear it all, and they can write it and read it. And when they read it, it comes to life in their head. Whereas when we see a bunch of dots on a page, we're just like,
we see a bunch
cool.
of dots on a
Can
page.
you put it through a MIDI for us?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult thing. They're just translating your ideas into reality. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah, but if you started inside a little, like that Brodsky idea, where you start off with like a little 10-piece chamber band, that's got some strings and some brass and some winds, and you kind of go, okay, what do we cook with this? And you can blow it out from there, but it's kind of cooked with those ideas in mind, would be great.
I think if you involved someone that kind of had a foot in both camps and had a mastery of that technology, that they could create the orchestra in a box. Do you know what I mean? They can put those notes through some samples and create it digitally, so that you can actually start to collaborate in real time. I think
you would do that, but I mean, I think what was so exciting about doing the the orchestral stuff is that that period where we had, I think, a couple of days in the Perth Concert Hall with the arrangers and the orchestra, having this real time. You'd play something and you're like, well, that doesn't really work, and then you tweak it in that real world. Orchestras like this massive machine that once they get rolling, it's a different.
We've just got to get like 45 people who are all into the same project.
Yeah.
Not getting paid for it.
Yeah. No one gets paid. Sorry, what were you going to say, Ian?
Oh no, and the fact that those were so far before the gig, they were a couple of months before, weren't they? Just those tryouts, so that we had time to kind of change it up.
Yeah, let the dust settle. Yeah,
but it's all the yeses, like that as an idea, like is the best way to do it, I reckon.
Yeah, I love that idea of the collaborating as the songs are coming together. I think that's amazing. How much time we got left? Oh, we got 1 minute left. Let's go one more question.
What happens in a minute?
All right,
we wrap it up.
This one's for you, Joel Z. This one's from Morgan Jade. Joel, did you take any goodies from the hotel during your 14-day quarantine? A bathrobe, perhaps?
I left the bathrobe actually, and that might be under the the Father's Day Christmas tree. There's such a thing. I gave Sarah plenty of hints that I want a bathrobe for Father's Day, because that's all I wore for 14 consecutive days. There was like curry on it. It was disgusting. But it was the only way to do it.
There's definitely been some areas in Eskimo Joe where we've had hotels for the first time that have had bathrobes, and Joel has fully embraced the bathrobe. And I think we did records at some point in time where you just had a towel around you. Yeah, I think there's a theme.
I don't remember that either.
I think the record was called Sweater. No, there's definitely been yes. I think that would be your chosen kind of,
I love a good bathrobe.
Slumming it.
Yeah, if you had like one outfit for the rest of your life, it would be.
Did you have slippers as well?
Those karate pajamas.
Do you mean
karate?
Karate, yes. So what were you saying, Ian?
Oh, just wondering about the slippers. If you went the full ensemble.
No, just the bathrobe. Usually without the tire thing.
Tony Soprano style.
It was the family time.
Walk out.
And on that bombshell.
Yes. So, Ian, we wish you the best of luck going into a time when hopefully you can put on some big shows. Hopefully you have some, special artists come to Western Australia to wow the Perth folks. But in the meantime, we will totally put our hands up to put some kind of artistic project together. Eskimo Joe on ice is what I'm suggesting, because I feel like
Eskimo Joe performing Ben Cousins on ice.
Oh, too soon.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed.
But legend, thank you so much, Ian, for joining us on our Facebook Live event. And we will see you probably, because people who are watching don't know this, but where he's beaming from is about 5 minutes down the road. So we'll see you 5 minutes down the road very, very soon.
Woohoo!
Eskimo Joe on ice.
Thanks for the time. See ya.
Business.